Good afternoon, everyone. And yeah, hello from the BMP eLearning studio. I'm live from our video production studio that you can see in the background. Thank you very much for joining this webinar this afternoon. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of my experience with you, and also looking forward to hear, a little bit from your side and your experience with eLearning. A little bit about my background. I've always been passionate about education. Apparently, since I started talking, if you believe my mom's story, that she likes to tell, when one of her friends, I was like 1.5 years old, and one of her friends watched a picture book with me and pointed at a cow and said, "Look, there's a moo." And I just said, "No, that's a cow." So kind of like to educate that guy. My sister still gets frustrated when she talks about back when we were kids and played school. I tried to teach her 5th grade mathematics when she had just started 1st grade. And of course it was my idea to play school. You see kind of a pattern there. And unfortunately, when I was 3 years old, I told my mom that I will never, ever, ever become a school teacher. So when I was looking into choosing a career, I was kind of in a dilemma, because when you say something like that when you're 3 years old, you kind of don't want to take it back 20 years later. So I found a job in a language school providing corporate language training. So I was teaching German to experts in Germany, and also working as director of studies, which was great fun, until a time when the demand for e-learning got more and more, and I got more and more frustrated because I did not believe in e-learning at all. And I was convinced that it would not work, especially not for languages, as I'm convinced that you need a partner to talk to, you need to practice conversation and all that kind of stuff. But as people asked for it more and more, I had to look into e-learning more and more. So I went to the internet. Where else would you look for online learning stuff? The internet was, as usual, quite helpful, and it did not take me too long to actually find an LMS that looked like I could handle it, and also find some good activities that you can actually easily produce with a little bit of computer background. And it did not really convince me, but it added to me getting a bit more enthusiastic about e-learning. Now, next challenge was to convince my boss. Like, she was convinced that we had to do something in regards to e-learning, but actually she didn't want to do anything about it, really, as she grew up without a computer. And so she didn't have any connection to computer stuff. She doesn't use Facebook. She doesn't know how to log in or log out or all these kind of things. So it was one of my jobs to convince her first, before we could move on, which I kind of managed once I showed her all the benefits we would have through using an LMS and some of that e-learning and administration of an LMS and all these kind of things. But she did not really get into it until one day I told her I would leave my job to follow my partner to Australia. And then she kind of panicked, and then finally took the time to look into it. And now that language school has the e-learning up and running, and people are asking for it. They have fantastic interactive activities, and it kind of formed my passion that I now have about e-learning, that I bring into BMP eLearning, where I work now. And I mostly bring in the educational side of e-learning to a great team of video producers, instructional designers, and animators. So that's a bit about myself. And as I've gone through all these steps, I would like to talk to you about main concerns that I had, that a lot of people still have when it comes to e-learning, and also positive facts with which you can address these concerns. And of course, want to show you the advantages that e-learning has over face-to-face training. Bit of a spoiler there. Yes, there are some things that are even better. And also want to address a very important point that is often brought up in regards to e-learning. What about the people stuff? I sometimes need the connection to my people. As I don't want to talk only about myself and my experience and these things, but make you benefit as much as possible from this webinar, I would like to hear a bit from you about, yes, whether you're working in e-learning yet or not, and how you see e-learning, which is why I have prepared a poll. And yes, share that with you. And if you just click yes or no, or yes, I don't really work in e-learning, but I'm involved with it, I would be happy to get your feedback. Already get 4 answers. All right, 3 more to go. Two more. I'll leave this poll open for 10 more seconds. But some of you are undecided. That's okay too. Okay. Thank you very much for your feedback. I'll quickly share that with you. So 2 of you work in e-learning and 4 are involved, and the rest did not get back to me with an answer, which is fine too. There's like a lot more options, a lot more answer options, but I wanted to keep it down. All right, thank you very much. What I would also like to know is, give me the next one. Sorry. So what is your opinion about e-learning? Are you, if you have to take sides, more the e-learning refuser or more the enthusiast, or you're not yet decided? All right, see a lot of undecided here. All right, make up your mind. Okay, so there's some people enthusiastic about it. Most of you are undecided, as I can tell from this poll. All right, well, let's see if we can get that to one or the other side by the end of this webinar. And I would like to know what in regards to e-learning, what your main concerns are, if you have any, and if the answer is there. I'll give you a bit of time to read through it. And yes, then would like to yeah, address your concerns maybe a bit more, if there are any. All right. Okay, I'll give you 10 more seconds just to finish that. All right, thank you very much. And that's a very interesting result. So Most of you say learners don't take the time to actually sit down, do it properly and themselves, like motivation. And LMS and managing content and all these things seem to be a bit of a worry. And I can understand both of these concerns. And I'm very surprised that nobody said it doesn't work. that has been or was my opinion for quite some time. Changed that now. But some of you say it's boring and dry, and that's actually one of the main concerns. Like, I'll talk you through the main concerns and then how I address them. So it doesn't work. A lot of people saying it's boring and dry. Do the students really do it themselves? And lack of self-motivation. Then learners need to adapt to the online environment, so everything is new. Learners need to have digital literacy, so they have to know how to use a computer, how to use a PDF, how to use all that kind of stuff. I need an LMS, that's a big issue, I understand. And then I don't know how to manage and administrate, or like my students, the content and all that kind of stuff. And also it costs a lot to create and to implement. So I understand all these concerns, and they are all legit. And so for the first ones I took together, it doesn't work and it is boring to dry, because how you address that is kind of both the same way. A lot of people say it's boring and dry because e-learning is understood as putting PowerPoint up and have your people click through the PowerPoint, and if you're lucky you get some multiple choice questions at the end that you can actually answer without having gone through the PowerPoint, but with some common sense. And that's an issue that I often see when I run training needs analysis and go through training programs in companies. It's also something I've seen myself when using online training. But this is something that you don't only see in e-learning, that also happens in real life when you have someone there who's called a trainer and clicks through a PowerPoint presentation by talking to people in person, and then I have to fill in that multiple choice test on a piece of paper. So it's all about making it engaging, create an experience for your learners. Like, make them actually drill something in, for example, and let the learners be active, make them think themselves. Like, this is another example from one of our courses. Give them an example, make them think themselves, what sentence in this case would you give someone who did such and such a thing? So they have to make up their mind and have interactivity. Like, this is an example of drag and drop exercises. This is the real workplace in cartoon version, and you gotta think about it, click on things, put things on the right place, and all these kind of things. So you actually can make it interactive and interesting and engaging if you want, and also make it relevant and related to reality. There's a lots of ways how to do that. I just picked one example here, which is like, put in science in your training that your people will see throughout the working day all the time. So they actually know, okay, this is what I had in my training course. So apparently it really matters. It matters to my work life. So there are ways to address these concerns. Then next concern, I don't know if my learners did the course themselves or if they just gave someone a crate of beer to sit down for them and fill everything in. Yeah. Legit concern. There is something you can do which I won't talk too much about because it's more a managing issue rather than an educational issue, but you can have them come in and do the tests in person. They can have to prove their identity beforehand, and that's everything that can be quite easily done. And if you know how, and if you have an LMS, which you would have in the case of providing online training. And also, if you have an engaging, interactive, super interesting course that students understand it matters to them, then they will actually be happy to do it themselves. So we can fix this. I doubt my learners have enough self-motivation to actually sit down and do the course, which is also understandably, but there's either sometimes people do it because they just have to do it, and then there's also not much of a difference whether they sit in a face-to-face training and sit through it because they have to, or sit through an online training. Then again, it comes to making it interactive and engaging. And also, recent studies found that actually, especially in corporate training, employees are more happy if they have the self-guidance. If you require them to be active, but if you provide them with a lot of different training opportunities, so they're actually more happy to do it if they have the opportunity and get up the self-motivation. So we can fix that. Another issue, my learners might be reluctant to adapt to the online environment, which is definitely an issue. Not everyone grew up with computers, and even if you did, you may be a good gamer, but you might not know how to work with Word and PDF and group chat and all the other things. So it always depends. And it is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed before students or before learners start their course. But it can be addressed. They need the right instructions, and they will be happy to actually find their way through the internet and then learn something on the go. So we can fix that too. I don't want to implement online training because I don't know if my learners have enough digital literacy. Fair point, and probably some won't, but this is something you need to learn, or like your students need to learn. If you look at the workplace, how workplace changes, and look at it in like maybe 10 years, like everything will be computer and internet and everything all over. And then think about who of you will still be working in 10 years. And a lot of your employees will. So it is actually important for them to learn and pick up some digital literacy. So make sure you support them, but don't be afraid of giving them something new that they can't handle. I'm just seeing that I'm getting questions, so please feel free to put in your questions, and I will make sure that I get back to them. Just will include them whenever they work, so please be a bit patient, but I will definitely get back to your questions. Thank you. Okay, so we can actually also deal with the digital literacy. A big thing, and as I could see from your poll, is I need an LMS. And yes, you do, or you need someone who can host the training for you. And that's often a big deal at the beginning to get your head around it, because if you don't know what an LMS is and how it works, it is hard to understand because it's nothing tangible. It's there and it's like all on the back end of computer and program, and you don't see, you can't touch it, how it all works. I can just tell you it works and it's something you need to try. So the best thing is to get in with LMS that you can try for free beforehand. That's the best thing, just to click around a bit and everything will fall into place for you while you click through, and you will understand it. And there are lots of people there who can host courses for you, and will also help you and guide you through the whole process of setting it up, of training you into how to use the LMS properly, and actually what things you can do with an LMS. And there we come to the next thing. So we can fix that. For example, VMP eLearning also could fix that, as we have an LMS where you can host your courses. So there's lots of people out there who are happy to help you with that. And if it comes to management and administration, it is a lot easier with an LMS. LMS stands for Learning Management System. So we have the word management already in there. So you can manage your enrollments, your learners, and your content and attendance lists and everything kind of you want to know. Your LMS automatically tracks for you normally. Like, make sure before you implement one, if you need all these things. And that answers one of the questions I just had, how to make sure, like, what training they did, how long they spent on exercises, if they actually completed an exercise, and all these things. your LMS tracks for you. There are even sometimes it doesn't come with the LMS, but there are plugins that you can install. And you just click 2 buttons and can export an Excel file, like a spreadsheet, that shows you which person did which exercise and which assessment at what time and how long they spent on it. You can even see like how long your employees, or on what days your employees mostly log in and do the training, and then see, well, they do it all Monday morning when they actually should catch up on work that they didn't do over the weekend. And you can maybe shift that, like all these things an LMS provides for you, and you can very easily track your learners. If you're worried about like privacy, you can also kind of tell the LMS to not give you the names of the students, just like times and time spent on certain exercises, and then have that in a privacy mode that you see how much time people generally spend on your exercises. So it's all there, so we can actually fix this. And a lot of people say it is expensive, because there is definitely some investment involved when you first start shifting to e-learning, but you will get a great return in investment, so I can only say it's not expensive. You'll save a lot in training costs over the times and increase your revenue significantly. And we will come to that in a minute, how that works. Just going to some questions. Recommendations for good LMS was one of the questions. I would like to, we can maybe email later or talk on the phone, but this would be way too long for this webinar, but I'm happy to chat with you about that afterwards if you're still interested. Thank you for your question. All right, so we said generally you can save a lot of cost in training with e-learning. So let's have a look at the facts. A study by the American market analyst Ambient Insight actually found that every dollar invested in e-learning comes back with $30 in productivity gain, which is quite a fair bit. Also, McDonald's saved £5 million over 2 years, and also increased their sales numbers, which is actually double revenue, just by shifting to online training. And I did not want to show you this, but anyway, there is a productivity increase of people who use eLearning, which means mobile learning. That is not only on a computer, but could be on the phone, could be on a tablet, could be on anywhere. Their productivity increases through by 43%, which is quite a lot. That mostly comes from because they can apply the learned skills immediately, like they will learn on the workplace, learn something and then apply it immediately. And also they're not away for too long from the workplace, because they might have like 5 or 10 minute modules that they go through and then can immediately work again, still learn something. So yeah, also facts, not in regards to costs, but still worthwhile having a look at. In 1 minute of video in e-learning, you can actually put in 1.8 million written words. Kind of, you don't put all the words in, but you just need to, as you can show things in a video, you need less words, and therefore you get more information across in a lot shorter time. Then I would like to ask you what you think about the information retained in 1 minute of video. How much do you think that is equivalent to in how many written words? No, that I just gave you the answer for that. Sorry about that. Very good example on how great e-learning is. We just go on to the next one. What do you think of how many mobile learning users actually use the device for eLearning in bed after they just woke up? What do you think? Yeah. Thank you. 2 more guesses. Thank you. So most of you reckon the 12%. A study shows that it is actually 52%. So it's over half of the people actually use it. And another small quiz for you. What do you think? How much less energy does e-learning use compared to traditional learning? That was a study conducted by the Open University in Great Britain. What do you think? All right. And it is actually 90%, which no one of you guessed, which is fair, but actually it uses 90% less energy than traditional learning, which is also a good point to change to e-learning. And actually the CO2 emissions go back to like about 80%. So it is pretty big. And then we do have a lot more nice facts, like when you watch a video, you can actually retain about 95% of the content, whereas it is only about 10% when you're reading something, which also basically means that you should not have solely PowerPoints online and call this e-learning, but maybe include a video and animation and stuff like that. And also, you can go through material 5 times as fast with e-learning than when it is on paper. And in total, it requires 50 to 60% less employee time, which will also save you some money if your employees have more time to actually work and don't need the time for further training. So there's some good facts, but that's a handful of facts. And just because they are there, it doesn't mean e-learning will work for everyone, or you will convince your boss or your staff or whoever to actually go with e-learning, which is why I would like to show you some advantages that e-learning has over face-to-face training, what you can do with online learning. So the learning process is self-paced, which means people can actually learn when they feel like they're able to absorb information. They can actually, sorry, just got one question. All right, I will, thank you, Jacqueline. I will get back to that later. Or like, oh, I'll bring that in right now. So it was actually disagreeing on the comment that you learn more through seeing a video than through reading. So there are definitely different learning types. And it is with video, it is like actually listening and seeing. And this is based on studies. That doesn't mean that you should cut out all your reading in e-learning. And for people who learn better through reading, you can easily support them through having a PDF ready, through having words implemented or subtitles implemented in your video. So you can actually address all the different learning types. And can do that a lot easier with e-learning as well. So one more advantage. Thank you for the question or the comment. And yeah, so going back, learning process is self-paced. You can sit down and learn when you feel like learning, when you can actually absorb, and not when someone tells you to, because maybe you're stressed, maybe you're having a headache, maybe you just had like an argument with your partner at home or whatever, and you just don't feel like sitting down and getting input and working on that. So if you have an e-learning program, you can do it like a couple of hours later or another day. You can learn in a situation that you feel comfortable in, because maybe your meeting room is where you usually learn is too cold, or you're a very shy person and don't feel comfortable learning in a room with lots of people. Whereas you having your e-learning program, you can make yourself comfortable, so your brain is actually happy to learn and doesn't have to worry about all the other things. So it's not only studies show, but it's evolution that you need to be able to learn. You first need to make sure that your basic needs are met. So your survival brain is happy, which means I'm fed and I had enough sleep and I feel safe. And then your emotional brain must be fed, so I must be happy and comfortable, and then I can actually learn. And e-learning makes that a lot easier. Also, the learning process is self-guided, and as I mentioned before, there are studies that show that employees actually learn better if they can guide themselves. Like we have a small example here, where you can just even only choose one topic to begin with. And that's very helpful because it talks more to people. People go like, okay, well, the other two, but this one looks really interesting. I want to learn that now. And then they're already in the learning mode, and they are motivated because they can actually choose themselves what they start with and what they learn now. And also having that, being given that responsibility for self-regulation is very motivating for employees, which recent studies found. So that's also something that e-learning is really helpful for. Then you can make it relatable for your target group, sometimes more easily than with face-to-face training, as you can see here in a project that was for Spinal Injuries Association. And it talks to kids, and kids wants to make kids aware of how they can actually get in trouble with their spine if they don't pay attention. And generally, as we maybe all remember, kids don't like to listen to some adult that says, don't do this and don't do that. But if it's actually kids sitting there and they're having issues sitting in a wheelchair because they had such an injury, they can better relate and therefore learn better. Then we have the possibility of making mistakes in a safe environment. And we can actually learn a lot from mistakes. Simple example, you bake a cake and don't use self-raising flour, but normal flour, and it just comes out as a biscuit. You'll be upset, but you will never ever forget again to use self-raising flour. In a work environment, especially when it comes to security reasons or hospital or whatever, you can easily, you can try everything in this environment. Worst thing is some virtual person dies. If a virtual person dies, you will never forget that and will never make that mistake in your real life. But this is something you can't practice in reality because you don't want a real person to die. But you will learn from that virtual mistake for sure. Then it has the advantage of the on-the-go acquisition of digital literacy. And as I've said before, this is something that's going to become really important in the future, that people know how to handle a computer and at least have basic understanding. And there's just some people who have never had the chance to actually work with computers, who don't need it now, but will in the future. And it is just a really good opportunity to find your way around and click around and get used to working with computers. And you will, as we've seen, reduce your training costs significantly, even if it's at the beginning maybe a bit of higher investment, but you don't have the ongoing training costs. All right. Yes, and an important thing, what about the people stuff? This is something for sure you're not, something different in e-learning, you're not in touch with the people. And some things you can't really teach without having the in-between thing, like a bit of an emotional thing between people, having the proper hands-on stuff, understanding your people. You also might want your employees to know that you're there for them, that you care about them, that they are important for you. And then putting them in front of a computer only does not solve that. And I totally agree. So what can we do? For example, imagine you have people that start working with you, and they will have like the first day anyway, like a induction, like a training, like you show them around and all these kind of things. But like, let's say like on this example, they have had their e-learning course beforehand, and they already know how to inspect the stretches for damage, for example. They will see it in reality, and you can just reduce the time, the face-to-face time that you spend with them in the beginning. And they already come prepared, ready to hit the ground, ready to go. And you can still have your face-to-face induction and welcoming your new staff. Or there is always, sometimes it doesn't work the other way, if you have distance learning or something like that. There's something called video response. So you can actually have a trainer or a tutor or someone sitting somewhere else, and over the computer they can actually record a response to what people did online and send it through. And the next time the learners log on, they see their trainer and get a kind of a personal feedback. So that's still nicer than just saying, yeah, correct, wrong, or sending an email, do this differently, but you still have a face that you can relate to. And you can at least get a little bit of emotion in there as a trainer, to not make the students feel so bad. Maybe if they get like a bad feedback and you read it, it's always like a lot harsher than actually when someone is there and smiles at you and says, well, you can do better next time, like this and this and this, but it was a good effort still, and thank you for working on that, and thank you for putting that much effort into it, something like that. And also you can always combine e-learning and face-to-face training. So what we had before with the stretcher would be like having an e-learning block at the beginning and then doing a bit of face-to-face training to have the connection with your staff there. Or another idea is having like a long face-to-face training block and then have some refreshers or some more detailed information from time to time afterwards, online training. Or you just do like 1 week is face-to-face, 1 week is e-learning, 1 week is face-to-face, or 1 month or whatever. So you have the face-to-face training, and in between your learners have to work themselves a bit. You can also bring in group work, even if they sit in different offices, so like everywhere around the country. There are forums on LMSs. They can talk through email. They have to go on websites together, and then like can create a poster together and all these kind of things that they can do in their e-learning phase, and then they come together for a face-to-face thing again and present the poster, for example. So there's all the different models. Or you have the e-learning block at the beginning, then some face-to-face, and then later some refreshers through e-learning. And that's just some examples that there are, but the combinations are endless. And I guess it is important to figure out, or having that analyzed, what works best for us. What do I feel comfortable with? Because, so personally for me, I am a people's person. I would want to have the direct contact with my people still, but still I think there's so many awesome things you can do through e-learning, so I would want to have them to have that as well. But then also very often it just comes back to what is in the budget, and there's just a lot of models for you to find out the best way to go. Yes, so that was some of my impressions, what I learned through the years. If anyone has a question again right now, so I went through the 3 that I had, and yes, so I'll just give you a minute to think about. If there are no questions, I'll leave you to it anyway. There is always the possibility to give me a call later or send me an email if you should come up with more questions. There is one question. Thank you. All right. Okay. Okay, so I had a question. What is the ideal blend of e-learning and face-to-face? And I gotta be honest, always depends on the industry you work in. I personally think if you have the chance, yeah, let aside budget or time or anything, a regular mix of face-to-face. I would always start with face-to-face to get to know the people, and then just swap with e-learning, like have face-to-face, get to know each other, then have some e-learning exercises, activities, games even, that you bring in, like serious games where your staff learns and has a virtual environment, goes through. And then the next week you have face-to-face training again, where you can talk about the experiences, give feedback. Like as a trainer, you can monitor the efforts of your staff, and then like you immediately know where they need more support. So you also don't waste your time by trying to teach them everything, when you actually can see, in their e-learning experience or in that game or that activity, they actually did pretty well. All of them did pretty well with the one thing that usually always is an issue. But surprisingly, they had dramas with something else. So in my face-to-face training, I can then focus on that. So if I could choose, I would always go face-to-face e-learning, face-to-face e-learning, and so on. Thanks for the question. I do have another one. Yes, so that question is, do you think that there are benefits in partnering the use of social media with e-learning? If so, what do you think they are? That's a very good question, thank you. And could be a topic for another webinar. I definitely think there are benefits. Social media, there's something like first of all, you need to learn about how to use social media properly. And people learn a lot from social media. What I see personally, some of my friends, how much they sit on the internet, and then I think they just sit at home all afternoon, but then they tell me all the amazing things they just learned because they read about this story and they saw this video and whatever, because they can remember short videos but not long texts. Have a combination with that, like have people create something for social media, have people analyze stuff that they see in social media. Makes it more interesting. So there's endless options, and I definitely think that is something to look into, and there are definitely benefits there. Thank you. All right. Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much. There are no more questions at the moment, but here are my contact details. If you feel like, very often questions come up like an hour later or a day later, whatever, feel free to either give me a call or send me an email, or also connect on LinkedIn. I'm happy to discuss anything you bring up and hear about your experiences. And thank you for participating. Thank you for all your questions. And I will have more webinars in the future. So if you found either that interesting, feel free to join in again. If you have any extensive questions, or say like, well, this would be something I would be interested in, send me the topics. I'm happy to come back with webinars on specific topics if you have any. And yes, and I hope we'll stay in touch. Yeah, please connect on LinkedIn if you're keen. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you soon sometime. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.